Hello, my beautiful creative friends. I'm Amma, your mindful wellness guide, and I'm here to inspire myself and you to live out our best lives. So today I want to take a look at disappointment. I know it's not the most fun topic to think about or even talk about, but hopefully the content in this video can serve you in a positive way. It is my intention to help you create a peaceful mind from a place of awareness and truth so that you can live your best life. So let's dive right in. What is disappointment? I looked up this definition before creating this video online, and the first thing that showed up said that it is a noun. So it's a person, place, or a thing, which is interesting. And that disappointment is a sadness or displeasure caused by the non-fulfillment of one's hopes or expectations. So I want to repeat this to you, and I want you to close your eyes and really listen to this definition. Please don't do this if you're driving or walking around somewhere. Don't close your eyes that way. But if you're home and you can sit down and practice with me, close your eyes and listen. So disappointment is a sadness or displeasure caused by the non-fulfillment of one's hopes or expectations. You can open up your eyes now. So the word that really stuck out for me was expectations. And the expectations that we have around ourselves, our lives, and the other people in our lives. Those are the things that usually have caused disappointment or that feeling of disappointment to arise in me, these expectations. But we are human beings, and this is a strong emotion that perhaps everyone has felt, right? And it's not about getting rid of it. It's about befriending our emotions and understanding what they are, right, when they show up, and working with them. But maybe the more you understand about your own mind, about your own self, and relate to others in the world, the more compassion will start to build within you. And you'll understand that a lot of your disappointments are just a lot of expectations. And the way we see the world is going to be different than how others see the world and do things. So there has to be a level of understanding in that capacity of compassion and empathy and forgiveness. Because at the end of the day, we're the ones responsible for our lives, for our outcome and behaviors. And I'm just going to guess that most of you watching this video grew up in a culture that valued education and safety and abundance, achievements, and that big encompassing word that we use a lot, success. That famous word that defines us, And I know that it keeps humanity going, right? Functioning from and for our successes. However, I want to take a look at how our minds connect with the outcomes of our lives and then suddenly define them as disappointments. And how disappointment can just hold you back from really living out your authentic life, and how disappointment can also lie to you. I'm going to go on a quick tangent now, and I'm going to talk briefly about our brain. Our brain and our mind are the same thing. When I talk about the brain, I mean the physical aspect. So our brains control our thoughts, our feelings, and our behaviors. I'm not a science expert in this field, so I don't want to even attempt to explain the firing and wiring of neurotransmitters and all the complexity that goes on. I'm sure there's other people that can explain this to you. But I just want to make a point in saying, let's single out two things in the brain. Dopamine and serotonin, which you've heard of probably. These are brain chemicals that are responsible for our mood, for our emotions, and our emotional regulation. They're also involved in other bodily functions like blood flow, digestion, sleep, memory, a lot of things. But these are two things, right? And they can cause so much effect in our mind. So scientists keep studying the effects of these neurotransmitters in our mood. And we know that low levels of serotonin are linked to depression, and low levels of dopamine are linked to feelings of guilt, inexplicable sadness, anxiety, and the inability to focus. So just these two chemicals in our brain does so much. So just so you have perspective. And to give you an example, With depression, like other mental health conditions, depression is a complex condition that's now showing to be caused by a number of factors, but they know that dopamine and serotonin are involved in depression. So our brain is very delicate, very complex, and really sophisticated. And there's so much more that meets the eye. Also, there's a part of the brain that I've mentioned before known to keep us safe by responding quickly to fear and danger, and it's called the amygdala. It's part of the limbic system. It's responsible for our fight-flight responses. So when we experience an event that is dangerous or something we perceive as dangerous, the amygdala stimulates the brain to remember the details of the situation so that we learn to avoid it in the future. So much is going on in our mind. This demonstrates that we're built for survival. And thus, this journey of exploration and openness and curiosity is what we are embarking on, right? To not just believe everything that we're thinking and everything that we are feeling. Our brain is a survival organ. It is designed for survival. Our ability to solve problems, learn from our mistakes, and create a community, right? The desire to have an alliance with people helps us to survive. And I'm telling you this because it's important to know that our body's working towards goodness, for betterment for us. But then we can get caught up with so many other elements, right, happening that can cause our downfall in many ways. I don't want you to lose sight of the truth when you start to defend and protect yourself. That's the amygdala shows up for you because it's thinking, it's trying to protect you. And maybe you don't need protecting, but it still shows up. So all these things are happening, right? It's magnificent, but we have to understand that when we feel disappointment, these are parts of the brain that are functioning for our survival. And we don't have to get caught up in it. And we can learn and train the brain to say and see it differently, right, with discernment. Anyway, let me get back to disappointment in and of itself. We have our desires, ambitions, hopes, dreams, and expectations, of course, for what we want our lives to look like. And it all relates also back to survival, whether you are aware of it or not. Even the relationships we choose, right, or we stay with, it all returns back to the notion of survival. And this might be hard to believe when you look at an unhealthy, abusive relationship that stays together, but even there, the root is still hidden behind all the superficiality. So there's that survival mode. Whether it's low self-esteem, the fear of loneliness, the fear of the unknown, right, of changing relationships, insecurity, then there's addiction and attachment, and this strong property, which is familiarity. To be familiar with someone keeps us there even longer. Again, a survival mechanism. Then there's guilt, feelings of approval, control, or fear. You know, there's so much going on, and our need to survive and thrive in the world is powerful and always at work. So I know it sounds complex, and it is, and that's why it's so important to have compassion for yourself and for humanity. Because how we live out our experiences each day becomes our life and the quality of our life. Disappointment is a strong emotion that can get in the way of our energy and our happiness and our progress. And I speak from experience. So expectations can cause a great deal of suffering when we don't feel that we're getting what we want or we need. Most times it feels like we can't avoid this feeling of disappointment, whether it's with ourselves or others. But I believe that the more we become open and curious about our disappointments and knowing where it comes from and what's triggering it, the more letting go we can do, the more freedom opens up to us, the more possibilities will open up to us when we are able to see the truth behind our emotions. So there might be some healing to do around it, this feelings of disappointment, and there might be some truth around it, right? You're disappointed when someone lets you down, but we don't have to always live in that place, and we don't have to let it bring us down, which is the one thing negative feelings do. It really affects our behaviors. So our mind comes up with definitions, interpretations, and so many stories throughout our lives. And a lot of our stories are most likely not fact. And we wear them like they're the truth. I encourage you to not believe everything that you're thinking, especially the fears and the judgments that are showing up. I encourage you to not attach so tightly to your stories, and especially the ones that involve disappointment. Instead, maybe sit with yourself, be open for new information. And what if the thing that you are disappointed in is not the story you're telling? It's the story you interpreted, but maybe not the truth. Wouldn't it be beautiful if you were having a hard time in a relationship and disappointed in a relationship, but you knew that they loved you and you understood that perhaps they're not loving you the way you want to be loved, but it's not because they want to disappoint you, it's because they don't know how to love in that way. And their interpretation and ability to share love and give love is different than yours. If you understood that instead of just blaming and comparing, maybe your heart would be more open. That's not to say that you don't move on from that relationship. You might need something different. You might want to experience something different in relationships, but not always take things so personally and so to heart so that you break your heart time and time again. Don't cause your own disappointment. Know that the world is doing the best they can from what they know, from what they've learned from their childhood up until now. So have that forgiveness and do your best to be the example that you'd like to see in the world. You start. So let's go ahead and do a short meditation now dedicated to our disappointment. Just trying to understand it, maybe open up our grasp a little more and learning to forgive and also to let go. And most importantly, dedicating this practice to trusting our life's unfolding, being vulnerable and aware, letting go a little bit to our disappointments, our control, and the things that no longer serve us. So let's get started.